Good morning, everyone. Good to see you here today. Welcome to the First Universalist Society in Franklin. My name is Lee Minichelli. I use the pronouns she, her. I am on the worship committee and also serve as the chair of the Connections Committee. Welcome, you questioners, seekers of truth, pilgrims longing for sanctuary. Welcome, you who seek spiritual and religious community for yourselves, your children, and grandchildren. Welcome, children and youth. You give us the gift of your wisdom, your joy, your curiosity, and we trust, and you trust that we will hold it all safe. Can we commit and recommit to being accountable to one another as a welcoming community that centers marginalized voices and listens to those voices? When we break our agreements with one another, can we offer amends? Can we be humble and generous? There is grace enough here. There is in this community the possibility of healing, of repair, of making things right within ourselves, between us, and the wider world. There is in this community possibility and hope. Welcome home. If you are visiting with us this morning, we are so glad you're here. Please take a moment to sign the guest book in the foyer. And to visitors on Zoom, please take a moment to sign the virtual guest book. You'll find the link in the chat. After worship, all are invited to enjoy coffee and treats in the Fellowship Cafe. Please join together now as we gather for worship.
Good morning. My name is Mark Minichelli. My pronouns are he, his, him. And I want to start off by telling you that this morning, most of us understand that housing or shelter is considered a basic human need. As I thought about choosing which of our UU values most directly supports the idea of housing for all, it became very difficult for me to eliminate any one of them. Think of the values: justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, generosity, and love. They all directly support making sure that abundant, affordable housing exists for all of our neighbors, and in fact, for all people everywhere. This morning, we are so grateful to have Joyce Mandel with us. Joyce is excited to be a housing activist in the Abundant Housing Massachusetts Network to advocate for abundant housing for all people in Massachusetts. As a livable communities activist for more than 30 years, she has worn many hats: mom, community organizer, sociologist, community development specialist, urban studies professor at Worcester State University, and a writer of a blog called Jane Jacobs in the Woo. Those locals know that Woo refers to Worcester. She has lived in Worcester since 1995, first moving there to serve as the Economic Development Director of Oak Hill Community Development Corporation. A self-proclaimed urban geek, she loves exploring Bay State cities and off-the-beaten-path towns and reading about parking, transportation, housing, and urban design just for fun. She believes in the power of praxis, the importance of real community, and the truth to be found in both stories and stillness. In a few minutes, Joyce will present a special service she has written for today, titled Sacred Shelter, From Abraham's Tent to Our Communities.
Good morning. My name is Denise Noble. My pronouns are she, her. I have for you a prayer by Rabbi Andrea Goldstein.
Excuse me, Denise.
D-
It's the poem More Doors.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, no, we have a poem. And, sorry. Okay, and do you want to say about where this came from?
I will be happy to. So we have a funny story about this poem. Joyce and I were kind of looking for a poem about housing. And we were searching Google, and we were putting in words like housing, community, homelessness, and trying to come up with a poem. Well, lo and behold, AI, much to our chagrin, came up with the most wonderful poem, and we kind of hemmed and hawed, should we use it, should we not use it, and for all you poets out there, I really apologize because I know you work so hard, and some of you are probably disappointed that we used AI for this, but you will see how perfect this poem actually is for our service today, and please excuse that it was created by ChatGPT.
Thank you, Lee. Okay. More doors. Let there be more doors, not fewer. Doors that open to light, to voices unlike our own. Let walls stretch, not to keep out, but to shelter more. More families arriving, artists painting in rented sunrooms, students boiling rice at midnight, elders planting marigolds by the stoop. Let the skyline soften with kindness, not fear. A duplex where there was a lawn, a courtyard shared by languages. We are not made small by sharing space. We are made whole. This street, once quiet with sameness, sings louder with every new welcome. Thank you.
Every Sunday morning, we share a ritual with Unitarian Universalists around the world, the lighting of a chalice flame. This morning, as Ava and Sarah light our chalice, please hear these words by Jean Waldstrom. Ava. Eva. Eva? Is your name Eva? I'm so sorry, Eva. In this small flame dwell, the beacon light of lanterns guiding travelers home, the warmth of heart fires tended through the generations. Thank you. The transforming energy of furnaces and children, and the power and life of our sun. May these blessings, warmth and light and life-giving energy be kindled in each of us. Please join together as we sing our unison affirmation. The words can be found in the front cover of the gray hymnal, which you do not have, and they're also on the order of service.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Allegretti. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm honored to be your Director of Religious Education. Today, during the service, the adults are going to be talking about and reflecting on housing and shelter. In Massachusetts, did you know that there is a shortage of affordable housing? Did you know that? A lot of us do. Yeah. That means when a person or a family needs to find a new place to live in Massachusetts, it is quite hard for them to find a place that is the right fit. And often when they do find a place that is the right fit, it is too expensive. They can't afford to live there. It also means that some families and people are unable to afford or live in the homes in which they already live. It is a very tricky situation. I recently learned about how hermit crabs find a new shell when they grow out of the one they are living inside. They don't have to worry so much about being able to afford their new home, but they do need to worry about finding a home that is the right fit. The shell often protects the hermit crab from the predators, right? So they really need to find one quick when they need one. So a hermit crab that's getting too big for their shell will wander along the shore looking for a bigger shell than the one that they're already in. And the first one that they come along, that's a bigger shell, they'll measure it up, see if it's the right fit, and often, I bet you can guess, it's not the right fit. Would you guess that it's not the right fit the first one they find? Right. So often when they find a bigger shell, it's too big. But instead of continuing to search for a better fit, they wait by this too big shell. And then more hermit crabs will come along, and they'll check out this too big shell and see if it's the right fit for them. And often, it's not. So the hermit crabs all gather by this too big shell. Can you imagine them all sitting there next to this too big shell, right? And guess what they start to do next? They start to measure each other. They go up to each other and they decide who's bigger, and they line up. First the too big shell, then the biggest hermit crab, then the next biggest, and the next biggest, all the way till the smallest hermit crab is at the end of the line. And they wait. Finally, when a hermit crab that's the right fit for the too big shell comes, that hermit crab switches into the big shell and leaves behind their old shell. And the next hermit crab in line switches into the shell that was left behind. And so on, until the tiniest hermit crab switches into the shell and leaves behind their tiny shell. Pretty neat, huh? There is a lot, I watched a video on it. There is a lot of jostling about, and sometimes a hermit crab gets left out. But we'll go with the, story. So I wonder, what can we learn from hermit crabs about housing justice? I have some ideas, but if you have ideas, I'd love to share them. One idea that I had is everyone has a right to a place to live. It's unfair if a hermit crab has no shell and is exposed to the predators and the elements, right? The sun would harm them if they were not in their shell for protection. And a community feels more welcoming when there is housing for everyone. Finally, the last thought I had was neighbors can support one another. Right? It is time to sing the children to their religious education classes. The words are in the order of service.
is a prayer by Rabbi Andrea Goldstein. Dear Creator, watch over your children, especially those with no homes to return to at the end of long and weary days. Protect them from all harm and keep them from despair. Open the hearts and eyes of those of us with blessings to share. Unite our voices in a call for justice, so that no man need ever lay down for the night on a wooden park bench because he has no home, so that no woman ever tuck her children into the back seat of her car because she has no home, so that no child need ever wonder, where will I feel safe because they have no home, so that all those who wander and all who are in need find the shelter and peace they seek. Remind us that we cannot rest fully secure in our homes each night until all your children are at last home. Blessed be and amen.
Good morning. Good morning. And thank you for the warm welcome. My name is Joyce, pronouns she, her, and I'm deeply honored to be with you today. And I want to extend a special thanks to Lee and Mark Minichelli for inviting me to speak. It means a lot to be a part of this community, especially as someone who hasn't given a talk in a religious service since I was 13 years old. So I ask for your patience and maybe a little grace as I share with you something that's close to my heart, the need for safe, affordable, and welcoming homes for all. I'm a community organizer with Abundant Housing Massachusetts, or what we like to say, AMA, a statewide pro-housing nonprofit. And I spend my days helping people come together to advocate for housing in their own communities. In that work, I've heard story after story about how hard it has become to find and keep a stable home here in Massachusetts. Here are just a few of the stories. There is Linda, who rents an apartment with 4 others in a North Shore coastal town. She bought a car with the idea that if the rent got too high, she could move into her vehicle to survive. There is Colin, who lives in a suburban home with his parents, isolated from his peers who live closer to the city. He sometimes couch surfs at homes with these friends to be closer to the action, but all of them believe they'll never be able to own a home or even save for retirement. There is Frank, who wanted to move back home to Franklin after college but couldn't afford it. And even moving to a city closer, a little farther away, became too expensive, and he now lives out of state. There is so much struggle out there just to be able to afford adequate shelter, or I love the crab shell, that image. At AMA, we often say the rent is too darn high. And every one of us has a housing story. For me, my daughter moved out of state for work and because of the high cost of housing in Massachusetts. I am personally blessed to have a home that is paid off, but we are soon to be empty nesters. And even though I would love to move to a walkable community where I can age without having to drive, I'm stuck. There are no affordable options to downsize. And decades ago, as a teenager, due to circumstances out of my control, I had to move into emergency shelters and depend on the generosity of foster parents. In those years, I was never sure where I could lay my head down for the night, and maybe that has sensitized me to the plight of people who have nowhere to go. Nowadays, I hike in open lands of my city, which Mark told you is the Woo, Worcester, and see temporary tents set up, sleeping bags half rolled or sprawled on the ground. People are living there outside. Occasionally, the city will send police and public health workers to sweep out the camps. It is so mean, it's so cruel. Our local library is a safer haven for our unhoused residents who take shelter there during the day. They avoid the cold weather and seek company. I welcome them in that public space, and I think there, but for the grace of God, go I. Now I ask you, doesn't everyone deserve a safe and affordable home, a place to lay down one's head in peace? Let's turn now to Scripture for an answer to that question. I invite you to study in the spirit of Shavuot, a holiday we are celebrating starting tonight. So this is very auspicious. Shavuot is the time when we as Jews celebrate our received teachings, our Matan Torah, the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai 3,000 years ago. And it is customary to stay up all night tonight on this holiday just to study. I won't ask you to stay up all night tonight, but let's take a couple of minutes now. Let's ponder what the scripture tells us of the importance of offering respite and homes to all by focusing on the story of Abraham welcoming 3 strangers into his tent. In Genesis chapter 18, verse 1 through 5, we read, God appeared to him by the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. Looking up, he saw 3 figures standing near him. Perceiving this, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and bowing to the ground, he said, My lords, if it please you, do not go on past your servant. Let a little water be brought. Bathe your feet and recline under the tree, and let me fetch a morsel of bread that you may refresh yourselves. Then go on, seeing that you have come your servant's way. And they replied, Do as you have said. In this story, Abraham fully models the religious obligation, what we call mitzvah, of welcoming strangers, hachnasat orchim, welcoming guests. He doesn't wait for the strangers to ask him for help. He runs out of his way and proactively approaches them. He treats the strangers with humility, bowing to the ground. He offers water, shade, food, shelter. It is said in the Midrash, the extra teachings explaining the text, that Abraham's tent was open to all from all 4 sides as a way to radically welcome all who came to his threshold. Abraham is also teaching us another important lesson: help even when you are suffering. Right before this action of kindness, in chapter 17, Abraham cements the covenant with God by having him and all male relatives undergo circumcision. So you can imagine recovering from this procedure, sitting at the door of his tent in the hot sun. He probably was not feeling his best. And yet, still in pain, he ran out to the strangers, bowed, and served them. And just as important as what Abraham does is what he does not do. Abraham does not ask the strangers for an ID. He doesn't ask for proof of health insurance. He doesn't ask them for the strangers' credit scores or check if they have a credit card. He doesn't even ask for their names. No, he just welcomes and serves. He doesn't at that point know that the strangers are really 3 angels, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, there to deliver some important news. And this is the key teaching too. The stranger in need, the refugee in search of safety, the person who is forced to live in a car, the person that was mentioned in the joy and sorrows that it broke my heart about being taken away. Each one of them is holiness, divinity disguised. We are all angels wrapped up in human bodies. What Abraham is showing us is radical hospitality. Last year, my friend Jenny in Western Mass met someone in a next-door exchange. The woman was getting kicked out of her home and had no other options. So my friend Jenny invited her to stay in her house until she could make her next plan. My friend John in Jamaica Plain is also considering opening his home to a refugee family who needs temporary shelter in this unsafe climate. His Unitarian Church is working with a refugee aid organization, and several congregants are already hosting families. In Worcester, Claire and Scott Schaefer Duffy turned their personal home when they were raising all their children into the St. Therese Catholic Worker House, offering shelter to homeless men and women in the community. The house is in a disinvested neighborhood experiencing challenges with addiction, prostitution, and crime, yet Claire and Scott literally never locked the door of their house. And this is radical hospitality today. Now, many of us may not be ready to take people into our own personal homes, but I ask you, Can we be ready to take people into our communities, the towns and cities where we live? Are we ready to open up our towns and cities to house more people? We are in the midst of a housing crisis in Massachusetts. The state needs 220,000 more new homes by 2035 in order to meet the demand. In short, we are simply not building enough homes. And housing scarcity inflates rents and home prices. It's the simple law of supply and demand. According to Zillow this past week when I checked, the average home price in Franklin is currently over $701,000. No wonder Frank, whose story I mentioned in my introduction, couldn't find a place he could afford to move back home. We are talking today about opening our tents and welcoming others, and yet the history of predominantly white suburbs is a lesson in how to exclude people from our communities by design. Now comes the wonky part. Please excuse me, I'm wonky too. But from the 1920s until 1948, racially restrictive covenants were used regularly across the country. These covenants, built directly into the deed, restricted the sale or rent to non-white people in white neighborhoods. So if you were Black or Mexican, Chinese, or another other, it was expressly forbidden that you could live in certain neighborhoods. My next door neighbor tells me the story of how they wanted to move into the exclusive Westwood Hills in our city. But when they were looking for a house 50 years ago, there was a restrictive covenant that would not allow the homes in Westwood Hills to be sold to Jews. So that was lucky because now they're my neighbors, so it's good. In his book, The Color of Law, Richard Rothstein argues that racial housing segregation was not a matter of choice or habit, but was in fact de jure, the result of actual government policy, especially government lending practices. World War II vets returned home to a decade of opportunity, getting a college education through the GI Bill, moving to a new home with a picket fence in a growing suburb, driving down highways subsidized and built with federal funds. But here's the catch. The government loans for housing through the Federal Housing Administration and Veterans Administration upheld racial discrimination. They would not give you mortgage insurance if you were Black. In 1948, the Supreme Court ruled racially restrictive covenants illegal. You couldn't outright discriminate like that. And that's when zoning became a key tool to keep certain people out of our towns and a way to continue to segregate our communities by class and race. What is zoning? Zoning just provides the rules of what you can and can't do with your property, what you can and can't build in a specific place. Researcher Amy Dane pored over historical zoning laws of many metropolitan Boston suburbs and found what she called the Big Down Zone in Massachusetts from 1968 to 1975. Remember, this was the time of the promise of civil rights. School desegregation in Boston, the hope of racial equality in education, housing, politics, and it was at this time that predominantly white suburbs made systematic changes to their zoning codes. Many towns limiting the building of apartments and other multifamily housing options. Limiting housing, limiting smaller and more affordable types of homes was a backhanded way to keep the tent doors closed and locked to those who wanted to move there. These suburbs continued to zone for predominantly only more expensive single-family homes. Now, the state has pushed back on towns. You can't use exclusionary zoning to keep people out. Here's some examples. In 1969, Massachusetts passed the 40B statute.
to allow developers to bypass local zoning laws to build deed-restricted affordable housing if the town does not have 10% of their housing stock affordable. We also refer to 40B as the Anti-Snob Zoning Act. In 2021, former Republican Governor Charlie Baker signed the MBTA Communities Law, or we call it 3A, that requires 177 Massachusetts communities on or near transit to carve out a small zone that will allow multifamily housing to be built by right. Multifamily housing, duplexes, triple-deckers, small apartment buildings can provide more affordable housing choices instead of larger single-family homes, the kind of housing that Frank might be able to afford. So far, 119 out of 177 towns, and you might have an update on that, Emma, but 119 have passed zoning in compliance with the law and said, yes, we will open our tents and allow the possibility of more housing to be built here in our town. But the fights have been very hard and constant, and sometimes very vicious. The people who say no, we hear the arguments about lack of parking, more traffic, more kids in the schools. And underneath those arguments, you hear a subtle call for exclusion, the fear of others who are poor or of a different racial or ethnic background. You'll hear comments like, we want to keep our neighborhood character. Our property values will plunge. We don't want our town to become named the next big city. For the past 2.5 years, I have had the pleasure to work with people living in towns who say yes. Yes to more abundant housing, yes to more neighbors and friends. These advocates know that our towns are better when we open them up to newcomers. More importantly, housing scarcity ultimately hurts all of us. When our kids can't move back home, when we were lucky enough to have homes but have no affordable options to downsize in town, when teachers, firefighters, police, and other civil servants can't even afford to live in the places where they serve. In August 2023, I carted a box of my son's Legos, yes, I had his permission, to the Franklin United Methodist Church so that 24 Franklin residents could dream, play, and build their ideal town. Each person used Legos and found objects to share a personal memory of home. And then collectively, groups pondered and built the Franklin of their dreams. They imagined more housing, especially near the downtown train. They imagined more types of housing beyond single-family homes, duplexes turned into triple-deckers, triplexes, accessory apartments, small apartment buildings. They wanted a vibrant, small, locally owned businesses in the core, bike lanes, sidewalks, open space, and ways to get around town without a car. So excited about their collective vision, the group decided to continue to gather. And in the next room at this church over there, after several meetings of the hive mind, they came up with their name, Building Equitable Neighborhoods for Franklin, or Ben for Franklin. It's great. In their work since 2023, they are opening up the tents of Franklin, advocating to welcome more homes and more neighbors. It has been an honor to accompany them. As Unitarians who recognize the worth and dignity of each and every person, are you ready to open your tents? As a call to action, I offer up 3 suggestions for potential next steps. Number 1, at coffee hour today, consider sharing your own housing story with another, maybe even someone you don't know very well. Telling and listening to our stories enables us to understand our shared need for the piece of shelter. Number 2, consider joining a group that addresses the issue of housing. Perhaps a group that is working to protect refugees and undocumented people, or a group that provides shelter and food to the unhoused. Or if you are from Franklin, consider joining Ben. Ben needs brave people who can speak up and say yes to new housing projects being debated at Planning Board and Town Council. There are so many no's. Be a voice that says yes right here. Number 3, study and learn. It is simple to know that we need more housing. It is complex to understand the root causes of housing scarcity and instability. Study and learn. And also, thank you for letting me get a little wonky on you. In these challenging times of instability, political division, and misinformation, I like to get back to the real basics. What thoughts and feelings am I housing? Am I feeding fears, anger, hopelessness? Or am I focusing on blessing and gratitude, love, hope? And then I look outside myself to my family. Am I creating a welcoming, resilient family? And then what about my neighborhood, my town? Can I make sure that it is the most welcoming place, that I can live in a place that reflects the deepest values that I have? I have a passion for improv. And in improv, if anyone's taken it, we are taught to keep the action going by always saying yes and. So in the spirit of improv and my failing voice here, let us close with this final prayer. Not written by AI. Let us say yes and. Yes to more homes. And yes to more neighbors with sugar to share. And yes to more windows. And yes to more doors that open. And yes to duplexes, triple-deckers, small buildings. And yes to shared gardens, bike lanes, and coffee shops to gather. And yes to kindness. And yes to radical hospitality. And yes to open tents and Abraham welcoming the 3 angels disguised as strangers. And yes, we only have to say yes and yes. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be true. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. And I apologize, some of this will be repeat. About 18 months ago, a new grassroots housing group was forming in Franklin in order to advocate for more abundant and affordable housing in our community, in addition to other housing-related topics as well. The initial and several subsequent meetings were organized and supported by Joyce from Abundant Housing, Massachusetts, and several of the early meetings were hosted here at FUSF in the foyer. Ben for Franklin, which stands for Building Equitable Neighborhoods for Franklin, continues to meet monthly and successfully advocate for housing topics at Franklin Council meetings, board meetings, as well as host community events such as the Jane Jacobs Walk and booths at the Strawberry Stroll and the Harvest Festival. In fact, several FUSF members and guests participate regularly in the Ben for Franklin meetings and events. This morning's offering will go to Joyce's organization, Abundant Housing Massachusetts, to help support the work that Joyce and her colleagues are doing across the state, helping to organize community groups such as Ben for Franklin, and to advocate for abundant, affordable housing at the state level. Please give as generously as you can this morning to help ensure their important work continues on. This morning's offering will now be received.
And now we're going to sing a hymn together. It's called Building a New Way. I believe it's number 117 in the Teal hymnal. 1017 in the Teal hymnal. And please stand if you are able. Thank you. Please continue standing for our farewell song. The words are, "Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again." We extinguish the flame in our chalice, but not what it represents, the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share them out into the world. Our worship has ended. Our service continues on. My friends, go in love and go in peace. Thank you.